Chioma's heart raced as the cold steel of her ex-husband's blade punctured her skin. The final betrayal. The final goodbye. Her body collapsed to the ground in the dark alley, her ex-husband's face hovering over her, his eyes filled with contempt. "You were never enough for me," he spat, his voice a bitter poison. Blood poured from her wound, her vision blurring as her life seemed to slip away. She wanted to scream, to fight, but the strength was fading from her, leaving only the chilling feeling of betrayal. In her last moments, Chioma's thoughts went back to Seo-jun. Her cold CEO. The man who had quietly stood by her for years, always distant, always reserved. She never thought of him as more than a colleague, someone who merely showed kindness when the world had turned cruel. But now, as darkness enveloped her, she realized something deep within her heart. Seo-jun had always been there. He had always loved her. It was just too late. As her life slipped away, a single thought rang through her mind: I wasn't supposed to die like this. And then, everything went black. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and subscribe to Mystic Tale by Luna. Because some secrets are too dangerous to keep buried. Chioma woke up gasping for air, her body trembling as she sat upright in bed, drenched in sweat. The room was unfamiliar, a soft light filtering through sheer curtains. Her heart pounded in her chest as she looked around, disoriented, the air still heavy with the lingering effects of the nightmare. Her eyes fell on the time, blinking at the unfamiliar numbers. 7:05 a.m. She had woken up in her old apartment. The smell of fresh bread wafted through the air from the kitchen. This was a normal morning. A normal day. But it wasn't. Her heart still raced as her mind slowly began to process what had just happened. I was dead, wasn't I? Panic gripped her. The nightmare had been too real. Her memories, the pain, her ex-husband's cruel words, all of it felt so vivid. But as she glanced at the reflection in the mirror, she saw the same Chioma she remembered. Young. Alive. Her skin was still radiant, her eyes the same deep brown, though now they carried a weight, a knowing that they hadn't had before. What was going on? Then, everything fell into place. The memory of Seo-jun flashed before her. The cold CEO. The man who had always been in the background of her life, watching from a distance. The truth stung sharply in her chest. Seo-jun had always cared for her. But how could she possibly believe that now? After everything that had happened? As she stood up and began to dress, her mind raced with thoughts of her past. Her ex-husband, Tund, had always been a cruel man. He was the type of man who wore a mask of charm for the world to see, but behind closed doors, his anger was unhinged, and his control over Chioma suffocating. She had always hoped things would get better, that love would be enough to change him. But it wasn't. It had only gotten worse. And then there was Seo-jun. The man she had worked alongside for years, the CEO of the company, always cold, always professional. She never thought of him as anything more than that, until now. She had been so blind, so focused on her broken marriage that she didn't see the tenderness Seo-jun had shown her from the very beginning. The little things. The moments when he had been there for her when no one else was. It was hard to admit, but she knew now. Seo-jun had loved her. He had always loved her. But why had he kept it hidden? Why hadn't he told her? What was he hiding? And why had he kept his distance? Suddenly, a knock at the door broke her thoughts. She opened it to find her friend Heian standing there, her face bright and full of energy. Chioma, you ready to go? Heian asked, her cheerful tone a stark contrast to the storm of emotions brewing inside Chioma. Yeah, just give me a second, Chioma replied, her voice unsteady. Heian noticed the shift in Chioma's mood, the dark circles under her eyes, the way she seemed so distant. Are you okay? She asked, her voice filled with concern. Chioma hesitated, not sure how to explain the whirlwind of thoughts racing through her mind. How could she tell her best friend that she had died? And that she was now back, in a life that seemed both familiar and entirely different? "I'm fine," Chioma finally said, her voice stronger now. "Let's go." The drive to work was quiet. The streets of Lagos were alive with energy, but Chioma was lost in her own thoughts. The city felt like a strange dream now, a place she knew but didn't fully recognize. Was she really here? Was she really alive again? The questions weighed heavily on her as she walked into the office, her steps faltering for just a second as she caught sight of Seo-jun across the room. He stood tall, his presence commanding. His dark eyes flickered in her direction, and for a brief moment, their gazes locked. Her heart skipped a beat. She had never noticed how much she had been drawn to him until now. The way his cold demeanor seemed to mask something deeper. She had always assumed he was just a distant, professional CEO, but now, looking at him through new eyes, she could see the flickers of emotion that played across his features. But Seo-jun wasn't just her boss. He was more than that. He had been watching over her from afar, protecting her in ways she never fully understood. Now that she had been reborn, she had to confront what that meant. Could she trust him? Could she trust his love for her? As she walked into the office, Seo-jun's gaze followed her every step. He said nothing, but his eyes spoke volumes. Chioma felt a shiver run down her spine. What was he hiding? She wasn't sure, but she knew one thing: she was going to find out. And nothing, not even her past life, was going to stop her. Chioma sat in her car, staring at the reflection in the rearview mirror, feeling as though the world had shifted beneath her. Her mind raced through what had happened just days ago, the brutal betrayal of her ex-husband, Tund. He had murdered her. He had taken everything from her. But now, sitting in the same car, her heart was filled with a new, strange sense of clarity. She had been reborn, and the pain was still there, buried deep beneath the surface. Her soul still remembered the sting of betrayal. Her phone buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. She glanced down at the screen, seeing Seo-jun's name. Her breath caught. Seo-jun. The cold CEO who had always kept his distance. The man who had loved her in silence for 5 long years. She unlocked the phone, quickly typing, "I'm okay. Just thinking about everything." Chioma couldn't quite pinpoint when things had shifted between her and Seo-jun. It had started as simple professional respect, him always being the silent figure in the background. But as the years passed, their interactions deepened, even if neither of them acknowledged it aloud. Seo-jun had always been there when she needed him, watching her suffer in silence, caring for her from a distance. And now, with her rebirth, everything felt different. The sudden realization hit her like a tidal wave. Seo-jun had always been there for her. But could she trust him? Could she trust that his love for her had always been real? Or was there something more to the story? Something she didn't know? If you're feeling that same shock I felt, subscribe to Mystic Tale by Luna. Because what happened next changed everything we thought we knew about family, love, and the choices we make to protect the people we love most. She pulled herself together, wiping the tears that had begun to form. Her thoughts shifted back to the memory of Seo-jun, standing in the corner of the office, always observing, never speaking. She could see it now, the subtle ways he'd shown his care. A quiet glance. A careful gesture. How had she been so blind? Her phone buzzed again. It was a message from Seo-jun, *, I know what happened. I'm here for you. We need to talk, *. Chioma's heart beat faster as she read the words. He knew. How? She hadn't told anyone. But then, in her heart, she knew. Seo-jun had always known. He had always been watching, always protecting her from the shadows. The office was quiet when Chioma arrived, her footsteps echoing in the empty corridor. She had been working at Seojin's company for the past 3 years. She knew the space well, too well. Yet, today, everything felt strange. As she walked toward the elevators, she felt a presence behind her. She turned around to find Seojun standing a few steps behind, his usual cold, businesslike demeanor softened. There was no hiding the concern in his eyes now. "You came," he said softly, his voice almost vulnerable. "I'm here," Chioma replied, trying to steady her racing heart. The room felt suffocating, filled with tension neither of them had voiced until now. Seojun gave her a subtle, almost imperceptible nod, his eyes searching hers, as if looking for something. Was it forgiveness? Trust? Chioma wasn't sure. His gaze held so much intensity that it felt like he was reading her soul. He had always known her better than anyone. Perhaps better than she knew herself. They walked silently to his office, the weight of unspoken words between them growing heavier with every step. The moment the door closed behind them, the office became a private sanctuary, away from the world's prying eyes. Seojun stood by the window, his back to Chioma. "I never meant for it to happen this way," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But when I saw you with him, I couldn't stand it anymore. I had to do something." Chioma blinked, taken aback. "Do something? What do you mean?" Her voice trembled, uncertainty rising within her. Seojun turned to face her, his expression hardening. "I loved you, Chioma. I always did. But you never saw me. You were so consumed by the man who hurt you that you couldn't see the one who was always there for you." His voice cracked, raw emotion spilling out, a vulnerability she had never seen before. It stunned her into silence. "I never told you, but I always watched you. I knew everything. I knew what Tun did to you. I knew you were in pain, and I couldn't stand it. I should have said something, should have intervened sooner, but I couldn't risk losing you." Chioma's breath caught in her throat. He knew. She had suspected for so long, but hearing him say it out loud made her heart ache. It hurt more than anything she had ever felt. Seojun stepped closer, his eyes pleading with her. "I did what I had to do to keep you safe. I made sure Tund wouldn't hurt you again." He paused. "And when he took you from me, I couldn't live with myself. I couldn't let it end like that." Chioma's heart ached, a flood of conflicting emotions overwhelming her. She stepped back, trying to distance herself from the intensity of the moment, but Seojun was relentless. "I know this is a lot to process, but I need you to understand. I did what I did because I love you, Chioma. More than anything." Her mind spun. She couldn't think. She couldn't breathe. He had known. He had always known. But why hadn't he told her sooner? Why hadn't he saved her from Tund? Tears welled in Chioma's eyes as she tried to speak, but the words felt stuck. Her heart wanted to forgive him, but her mind, her scars, were screaming at her to run. She had been through so much, and the idea of trusting Seojun now, after everything, felt impossible. Seojun's gaze softened as he took a step back, sensing her hesitation. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I just need you to know the truth." The truth. She had been living in a lie for so long. She didn't know if she could trust him, but one thing was clear, the love they had shared, unspoken, unnoticed, but always there, was not something she could just walk away from. Not anymore. Chioma stood frozen in place, the weight of Seojun's words hanging heavy in the air. Her mind was spinning, grappling with the revelation that the man she had worked with for years, the cold, detached CEO, had been silently loving her all along. But the painful truth was that she could not simply sweep away the past. The years of emotional turmoil, the years of being controlled, humiliated, and suffocated by Tund, her ex-husband, had left scars deep within her. Could she really move forward? Could she trust Seo-jun, the man who had watched her suffer from afar and done nothing to intervene? Her breath hitched as the memory of her ex-husband's final act of betrayal surfaced. Tund's face, cold, unrecognizable, twisted with rage as he took everything from her, was an image she would never be able to shake. How could I have been so blind? She thought, gripping the arm of the chair beside her, trying to steady herself. She had let him control her for too long, her identity fading as she put his needs first. And now she was forced to confront the harsh reality that it was over. Seo-jun's footsteps echoed in the room as he cautiously stepped toward her, but Chioma wasn't sure if she could allow him closer. She could feel the warmth of his presence, but her body recoiled, hesitant, unsure of where to place her trust. Chioma, Seo-jun's voice was soft, but firm. I know you're angry. I know you're hurt. I never meant to complicate things, but I couldn't sit back and watch anymore. I couldn't watch you suffer in silence. Chioma looked at him, her eyes searching his face, looking for something, anything, that would give her the answers she needed. Why now? Why had he waited so long? She wanted to speak, to ask him why he hadn't intervened sooner, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she found herself standing in the midst of her swirling thoughts, her emotions threatening to overtake her. She opened her mouth to speak but couldn't find her voice. It was as if everything she had known about herself was in question, and now, standing here with Seo-jun, the man who had loved her without her knowledge, was not the solace she had imagined. His love felt like a storm in the calm of her already tumultuous world. That chill I felt in that moment, have you ever felt that too? When your heart knows something before your mind catches up. Tell me in the comments, your story might help someone else see the signs. I tried, Seo-jun continued, his voice trembling with frustration. I tried to protect you in every way I could. But I couldn't do it without risking everything we had. And I knew that if I told you the truth, you would never forgive me. Chioma's hands shook as she clenched them tightly. Forgive you, she repeated, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. How could I forgive you for watching me suffer, for letting me drown in my own pain? You were the one person who had the power to stop it all and you did nothing. Nothing. Seo-jun flinched at her words, but he didn't step back. He stood there, quietly absorbing the weight of her anger, knowing she was right. He had watched from the sidelines, helpless and paralyzed by his own fear of losing her. I didn't know what to do, Chioma, Seo-jun whispered, his voice breaking. I didn't know how to make it right. Every time I wanted to tell you, to step in, I saw you growing further away. I saw you building a life with him, with Tund, and I thought, if I said something, it would destroy you even more. I never meant to hurt you. Never. The silence between them stretched, heavy and uncomfortable. Chioma's thoughts raced, but she couldn't bring herself to say anything more. The anger, the confusion, the hurt, all churned inside her like a storm she couldn't contain. She needed time to process, time to understand. I was wrong, Seo-jun finally said, his voice low but full of sincerity. I should have told you. I should have fought for you, for us. I was a coward. And I'm sorry. Chioma closed her eyes, the apology lingering in the air. Could it be enough? She longed to trust him, to give him the benefit of the doubt, but how could she? She had been through too much. The scars, the pain, how could she just erase it all? I can't just forget it, Seo-jun, Chioma said softly, finally able to speak, her voice breaking. I can't forget that I was left alone to face it all. That I had to survive it alone. Seo-jun's heart shattered as he watched her, realizing just how deeply his inaction had scarred her. His hands were shaking as he reached out, cautiously, for her. But Chioma stepped back, her heart thudding in her chest. You should go, she said, her voice firm, though filled with sorrow. I need to think. I need time to sort this out. Seo-jun stood frozen, unsure of what to do. His heart screamed at him to stay, to fix everything, but he knew Chioma needed space. He nodded silently and turned, walking toward the door. But just before leaving, he looked back at her, his eyes pleading for understanding. I'll wait for you, Chioma, he said quietly. Whenever you're ready, I'll be here. The door clicked softly behind him as he left, leaving Chioma standing alone in the room, the silence now thick with unanswered questions. Later that evening, as Chioma sat alone on the couch, her thoughts wandered back to her past with Tund. How had she allowed herself to be so blinded by his false promises? The love she had thought she once shared with him felt like a distant memory now. It wasn't love, it was control. It was manipulation. And now, after everything, after dying and being reborn, she had the clarity to see it. But it wasn't just the past with Tund that haunted her. It was the present, too. She had been given a second chance, and yet she didn't know if she could trust herself, let alone Seo-jun. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Seo-jun. She hesitated for a moment before reading it. I'll be here when you're ready to talk. No rush. Just, take care of yourself. I love you. Chioma stared at the words, her heart fluttering in her chest. He loves me. But how could she believe it? She didn't even know who she was anymore. Who had she been in her past life? And who was she becoming now? For the first time in a long time, Chioma felt lost. She wasn't sure if she could let go of the past, if she could forgive Seo-jun for the pain she had endured, or if she even wanted to. But one thing was clear, she wasn't the same woman who had once been a prisoner in her own life. And now, she had a choice. A choice to heal. A choice to move forward. But how? And with whom? She sighed, rubbing her temples as the weight of everything pressed down on her. For the first time in years, she wasn't sure about anything. But she knew one thing, she would have to face her truth, and Seo-jun's, before she could move on. Chioma woke up to a quiet morning. The sun streamed in through the window, casting a soft, golden glow on the room. She could hear the distant sounds of the city, the hum of cars passing by, the call of street vendors, the laughter of children. But none of it felt real. It all felt like an echo of a life she no longer fully understood. The night had been restless. After her conversation with Seo-jun, she had lain awake for hours, her mind racing. The weight of his confession was too much to bear. The man who had always been there for her, the man she had never truly seen, had been silently loving her all along. The pain of her past with Tund, and the confusion of her current feelings, was overwhelming. She had spent so long buried under the weight of fear, guilt, and unspoken emotions that now, standing in the aftermath of it all, she didn't know where to begin. Sitting on the edge of the bed, Chioma tried to steady her breath. She had spent years running from her own pain, from the truth that she had been too afraid to confront. Now, with everything laid bare before her, she realized she had a choice. She could continue to live in the shadows of her past, or she could finally face it, embrace it, and move forward. But could she? Could she trust herself again? That chill I felt in that moment, have you ever felt that too? When your heart knows something before your mind catches up. Tell me in the comments, your story might help someone else see the signs. Her phone buzzed, interrupting her thoughts. She glanced at the screen and saw Seo-jun's name. Her heart fluttered, but she quickly pushed the feeling aside. No. Not now. She couldn't do this. Not yet. Not until she had the answers she was searching for. She needed space. Space to think. Space to breathe. Chioma stood and walked over to the window, staring out at the city below. Lagos had always been her home, but now, it felt like a foreign land. The buildings that she had once known so well now seemed distant and cold, like strangers. And the memories of her old life, her marriage to Tund, the abuse, the silent suffering, felt like they belonged to someone else. She needed to make a decision. She needed to decide what to do with her life, and more importantly, with Seo-jun. He had told her that he loved her. But did she love him? Did she even know what love was anymore? Was she capable of loving again, after everything? The thought of Tund, of his rage, his cruelty, flashed in her mind, and Chioma felt a wave of nausea rise in her stomach. No. She couldn't go back to that life. She couldn't let herself be controlled again. And yet, there was a part of her that still longed for the safety of what she had known, for the comfort of a love that was familiar, even if it was toxic. She needed to talk to someone. Someone who would understand. Her thoughts drifted to Haein, her Korean friend who had been by her side since she moved to Lagos. Haein had always been a calming presence in her life, the one person who didn't judge, who listened without interruption. Chioma grabbed her phone and quickly sent a message. Haein, I need to talk. It didn't take long for Haein to reply. I'm here. Let me know when you're ready to meet. Chioma let out a deep breath. She needed to sort this out, to find clarity before she could make any decisions. She needed to hear someone else's voice, someone who didn't carry the weight of her past with them. Someone who could help her see things from a different perspective. Hours later, Chioma found herself sitting across from Haein at a quiet cafe. The soft chatter of other patrons filled the background, but the noise seemed distant. The two women sat in silence for a moment before Haein spoke, her voice gentle. Chioma, Haein began, you've been through so much. But you're here. You're alive. And you have the power to decide what happens next. Chioma looked down at her hands, her fingers trembling slightly. She had never been one to shy away from difficult decisions. But this felt different. This was her future, her happiness. And for the first time, she realized that she had the power to shape it. I don't know what to do, Haein, Chioma admitted, her voice quiet. I don't know if I can trust him. Seo-jun, he's always been there, but I was so blinded by everything else. I'm scared. Scared of making the wrong choice. Scared of letting myself feel again. Haein reached across the table, gently placing her hand over Chioma's. It's okay to be scared. But you don't have to carry that burden alone. You've always had a choice. And now, you have the chance to choose yourself. To choose what makes you happy. You deserve that. That chill I felt in that moment, have you ever felt that too? When your heart knows something before your mind catches up. Tell me in the comments, your story might help someone else see the signs. Chioma felt the weight in her chest lift just slightly, the tightness easing. Haein's words had struck a chord. She had spent so much time trying to hold everything together for others, for Tund, for her family, for Seo-jun. But what about herself? Had she ever really chosen herself? I want to, Chioma said, her voice stronger now. I want to choose happiness. I want to choose love. But I don't know if I can trust Seo-jun. After everything, after the years of silence, can I really trust him with my heart? Haein smiled softly, her eyes warm. You don't have to have all the answers right now. You just need to trust yourself. And if Seo-jun truly loves you, he'll wait for you to heal. He'll respect your pace. Chioma nodded slowly, feeling a sense of peace settle over her. She was tired of running. She was tired of being afraid. It was time to face her fears head-on. It was time to face the man who had loved her all along, even when she hadn't seen it. That evening, Chioma made the decision. She would meet Seo-jun. She needed to talk to him, to understand his feelings and her own. She needed closure on this chapter of her life. When she arrived at Seo-jun's office, he was waiting for her, just as he had promised. He stood by the window, his back to her, a man of few words, but there was a vulnerability in his posture that Chioma had never seen before. "I'm here," she said softly, her voice steady. Seo Jun turned around, his eyes meeting hers. The moment they locked eyes, it felt like everything, every doubt, every fear, every unspoken word, hung between them. "I'm sorry, Chioma," Seo Jun said, his voice thick with emotion. "For not being there when you needed me most. For being too afraid to speak up. I was a coward." Chioma took a step forward, her gaze unwavering. "Seo Jun," she began, her voice gentle but firm, "I'm not asking for perfection. I'm asking for honesty. I need to know if you're really here for me. I need to know if I can trust you." Seojun's eyes softened, his face a picture of regret and longing. "You can trust me. I've always loved you, Chioma. And I will wait for you, no matter how long it takes. Because you're worth it." Chioma took another step forward, her heart pounding in her chest. She had made her decision. The fear still lingered, but she no longer wanted to be ruled by it. She could feel Seojun's love, raw and unguarded, and for the first time in a long time, she believed it. And so, as she closed the distance between them, Chioma knew that this was not the end of her journey. It was just the beginning. Seo Jun reached out, his hand gently cupping her face, and for the first time, Chioma allowed herself to lean into his touch. She was ready to face the future, to heal from the past, and to embrace the love she had been so afraid of. Together, they would rebuild, not just their relationship, but their lives, one step at a time.